The night was darker than usual, the moon hidden behind thick clouds, and the wind carried the scent of rain and fear. In a small village at the edge of the kingdom, a young blacksmith's apprentice named Elden sat alone beside the dying fire. His hands were rough from long work, his clothes covered in soot, but his eyes were restless. He had been dreaming of the same voice for 3 nights, a whisper that called his name from deep beneath the earth. The whisper came again as thunder rolled across the sky. "Elden, come to me," it said, soft but clear, like a breath against his ear. He stood quickly, heart racing. He looked outside. The village slept. The streets were empty, but in the distance, he saw something glowing faintly beyond the trees. He tried to ignore it, but the whisper grew stronger. "Come, Elden. Your strength waits." It was not just a sound. It was a pull, like invisible hands drawing him forward. His feet began to move before his mind could decide. He grabbed his old cloak and a small knife and stepped into the storm. The rain fell hard, lightning lit the sky, and every flash showed the forest ahead, ancient, black, and alive with shadows. He followed the glow deeper and deeper until he reached a clearing where the ground split open like a wound. A cave mouth yawned before him, breathing cold air that smelled of stone and secrets. The glow came from inside. Elden hesitated. He had heard stories. This was the Cave of Whispers, a place no one entered and returned sane. But the voice whispered again, "Do not fear me, child of fire. I have waited long enough." Something inside him, curiosity, or destiny, pushed him forward. He entered the cave, each step echoing. The deeper he went, the louder the whispers became. They were not all the same. Some sounded like men, others like women, some crying, some laughing. Torches lit themselves along the walls as he passed. The glow led him to a great chamber where a stone altar stood in the center. Carved around it were runes older than any language he knew, and on the altar lay a sword, unlike anything he had ever seen. Its blade was black, smooth like glass, but beneath its surface, something moved, like smoke trapped in crystal. Chains of silver held it down. Covered in glowing symbols, Elden's breath caught. He could feel heat coming from it, but also cold, a strange mix that made his skin crawl. The whispers stopped all at once. Then a deep voice filled the chamber, not from outside, but inside his own head. "You found me at last," the voice said, calm and powerful. "You are the one who can free me." Elden stumbled back, eyes wide. "Who are you?" He whispered aloud. "I am power itself," the voice answered. "The strength of kings, the end of weakness, the fire of victory." Elden looked at the sword again. His heart beat fast. His life had always been small. He worked, ate, and slept in the same corner of the same forge, dreaming of greatness he would never reach. Now something great was speaking to him, offering him a way out of his small life. "What do you want from me?" Elden asked. "Only your touch," the voice said. "Break my chains and I will make you unstoppable." He stepped closer. The air around the sword shimmered, and the runes began to flicker. He could almost hear them screaming. The voice softened, almost kind now. "Take me, Elden, and you will never bow again. No one will hurt you. No one will forget you." He reached out his hand. Shaking, the closer he got, the heavier the air became. His head rang with hundreds of whispers, all begging. Warning, tempting. "Do not take it," one cried. "He lies," another hissed. Suddenly, a shape moved in the shadows behind the altar. A figure. Cloaked and bent, the old man's eyes glowed faintly blue. He spoke in a trembling voice. "Boy, step away, that sword is cursed." "It was sealed here by the gods themselves." Elden froze. The man raised a hand, showing burn marks on his palms. "I was once like you," the old man said. "I heard its call, I touched it, and it took everything from me, my family, my name, even my face." Elden looked closer and saw that half of the man's face was turned to stone. His skin cracked like broken rock. The man stepped closer. "Leave now, before it wakes again." But the sword pulsed with light. Stronger and stronger, the runes on the chains began to melt. The voice in Elden's mind grew louder. "He lies, he is weak, do not end like him, take me, and the world will kneel." Elden's hand trembled in the air between both choices. The old man's warning and the sword's promise. Lightning flashed through the cave entrance. Thunder shook the ground. The old man shouted, "If you touch it, you will never be free." The sword whispered, "If you leave, you will never be strong." Elden stood between light and shadow, fear and desire, sweat dripping from his face. He could feel his heart pounding like a hammer against his chest. He took one last deep breath. His fingers brushed the sword's hilt, and the cave erupted in blinding light. The old man screamed as the runes shattered. The sword's laughter echoed inside Elden's skull. Then silence. Elden opened his eyes, lying outside the cave entrance. The storm was gone, and the forest was quiet. The sword was in his hand, black, alive, and whispering softly. Now we begin, viewer. If you were Elden, would you take the power or stay weak? Tell me in comments. When Elden woke, the sun had risen over the forest. Soft light breaking through the fog. The world felt different. Heavier, quieter. He sat up slowly, feeling the weight of something in his right hand. The black sword gleamed, dark and alive. Faint smoke rising from its blade. He tried to drop it, but it didn't fall. It clung to his palm like it had grown into his skin. He pulled, twisted, even struck it against a rock. But it stayed. The whisper came again, calm and cold. Do not fight me, Elden. We are one now. His heart pounded. He looked down at his arm. Dark lines spread beneath the skin like roots of shadow. He stumbled to his feet, dizzy. The cave behind him had collapsed. Sealing the entrance, the old man was gone. No sign he had ever been there. The whisper continued. Soft as wind. You freed me, and in return, I will free you, Elden asked aloud. Free me from what? The voice answered, from weakness. When he returned to the village, people stared. His eyes seemed different, sharper. Colder, his master, old Farron, watched him from the forge doorway. Boy. You've been gone all night, Farron said. And you look like you've seen the dead. Elden tried to speak, but his voice came out deeper, almost echoing. I found something, he said. He didn't show the sword at first, but the whisper in his head urged him. Show them. Let them see your strength. He raised the sword into the light. The black metal shimmered strangely, and for a moment everyone stepped back. Farron's eyes widened. Where did you get that thing? Before Elden could answer, a scream cut through the air. Bandits had entered the village, setting fire to carts and shouting for gold. Panic spread. Elden didn't think, he just moved. The sword pulsed with power as he swung it through the air. It was like the world slowed. Every strike felt guided, faster than thought. The bandits fell one by one, the sword cutting through armor and flesh like silk. When it was over, silence filled the village again, smoke rising. The villagers stared at Elden, not with gratitude, but with fear. The sword dripped black light, not blood, and the whispers around him grew louder, laughing. Farron stepped closer, voice shaking. What did you do, boy? That was not human. Elden looked at his hands. They trembled. The veins in his arm had turned completely black. He whispered, I saved them. Farron's voice was cold. You damned us. That night no one came near him. He sat alone by the forge fire, the sword lying beside him, whispering softly like a friend. They fear what they do not understand. But you saw how weak they are. You saw how easily they fall. You could rule them. Elden, he clenched his fists. I don't want to rule. I just want peace. The voice chuckled. Peace comes only when the strong decide it should. Later, Farron came quietly to the forge. I know that blade, he said. My grandfather told stories of it, a cursed sword that devoured the souls of men. Elden turned, eyes glowing faintly in the firelight. It saved us, he said. Farron shook his head. It used you. Before Elden could reply, a horn sounded in the distance. Soldiers, the king's men, marched into the village. Their captain stepped forward, armor shining. By order of his majesty, he declared. The one who destroyed the Cave of Whispers must be brought to the capital. Elden froze. Farron tried to speak for him, but the soldier's eyes had already fallen on the sword. One of them gasped. That's it. The mark of the curse. The captain raised his blade. Seize him, the whisper roared inside Elden's head. They will take you, they will cage you, fight Elden, fight. He tried to resist. No, he whispered. I don't want to hurt anyone. But his hand moved on its own. The sword rose, dark power swirling around him like smoke. The soldiers attacked, and the world became a blur of steel and screams. When it was over, the air smelled of ashes. Elden stood trembling in the center of the square, the sword pulsing with energy. The bodies of the soldiers lay around him. Farron looked at him with horror. What have you done? Elden dropped to his knees. I didn't mean to, he whispered. Tears mixing with rain, the voice spoke softly now. It is not your fault. You are learning. Every great power begins with loss. The villagers fled from him that night. He was alone, the fire dying beside him. He stared at the sword, feeling both alive and dead, powerful and empty. He could not tell which feeling was truly his anymore. As dawn rose, the voice said again, "The king will not forgive this. He will send more. You can run. Or you can rise." Elden looked toward the distant mountains where the capital stood. He could almost see it in his mind, a city of gold and stone. Waiting, judging, he whispered to himself. If I go there, maybe they can help me. The sword laughed. Help you? They will fear you, cage you, and study you, but together, we could make them kneel. Elden stood at the edge of the village road, torn between fear and fury. The ashes behind him, the unknown ahead. The whisper grew quiet, patient. Decide, Elden, run to them, or make them run from you. He took a step forward, rain falling again. His reflection in a puddle showed eyes that were no longer his, glowing with the same black fire as the sword. Audience, if you were Elden, would you seek help or embrace your power? The road to the capital stretched like a gray ribbon across the land. Elden walked alone, cloak torn by wind, the black sword wrapped in cloth and tied to his back. Each step felt heavier than the last. The whispers in his head had grown quieter, but never silent, always waiting, always watching. He had not slept in days. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the faces of those soldiers, the smoke rising from his village, the fear in Master Farron's eyes, guilt pressed on his chest. But another feeling lurked beneath it. Power. Warm and dangerous, the sword's voice came softly. You saved yourself, Elden. You survived because of me. He tried to ignore it. You made me kill them, he whispered under his breath. No, the voice replied. They forced your hand. You are not to blame. They would have taken you in chains. As he approached the capital gates, guards surrounded him. Their captain, a tall man in silver armor, stepped forward. By the order of the king, you are to be brought before the royal court, he said. Elden nodded silently, too tired to fight. The city beyond the walls was unlike anything he had seen. Towers touched the clouds, banners fluttered above marble streets. Crowds whispered and stared as he was led through the square. The sword on his back seemed to hum, sensing the fear around it. At the palace, he was brought before King Aldrich, a stern man with eyes sharp as winter. And beside him stood his daughter, Princess Lyra, dressed in scholar's robes instead of silk. She studied Elden carefully, her gaze not afraid but curious. The king spoke first. You destroyed a sacred cave. You wield a weapon that has not been seen for centuries. Do you deny this? Elden hesitated, then answered, I didn't mean to destroy anything, the sword. It called to me, the court murmured. Lyra's eyes widened slightly. It spoke to you? She asked. Yes, Elden said quietly. It speaks still, the king's expression darkened. That blade was sealed by the first sorcerers. It contained something evil, something that nearly ended this kingdom. Elden looked down. I didn't know. I only wanted to protect my village. Lyra stepped forward. Father, let me speak with him alone, she said. The king frowned but agreed. Very well, but do not trust him too quickly. In a quiet chamber filled with old scrolls, Lyra studied the sword closely. I have read of this weapon, she said, tracing the faint runes along its hilt. It was called Rhaegor's Fang, forged to hold a spirit of war, not to be wielded. Elden's breath caught. You mean, there's something inside it? Lyra nodded. Yes, a spirit that feeds on conflict, on anger, on loss. The sword whispered suddenly, voice sharper. Do not listen to her. She knows nothing of power. Elden flinched, pressing a hand to his head. Lyra saw it. It's speaking now, isn't it? He nodded slowly, fear in his eyes. It never stops. Lyra's face softened. You're not the first it has tried to use, but maybe you are the first who can resist it. Elden looked at her, confused. Resist it? I can't even put it down. Then we must find a way to break the bond, she said firmly. For days, Lyra worked with him in secret, studying ancient texts, symbols, and the old songs of the blade. She believed the curse could be reversed if the sword's spirit was forced to face its own reflection. A mirror forged from the same metal as the sword itself. But every night, the voice in Elden's mind grew stronger. She will betray you, Elden. She wants my power for herself. It hissed. She will use you and leave you empty. One evening, As they worked under candlelight, Lyra touched his arm gently. "You're shaking," she said softly. "When was the last time you slept?" Elden looked away. "I can't. When I close my eyes, I see what I've done." Lyra hesitated, then whispered, "You're not a monster, Elden. The curse feeds on your guilt, not your strength." For a brief moment, the voice fell silent, and Elden felt peace, a small spark of warmth. But then the door burst open. The king's guards rushed in. "Your Majesty commands the prisoner be moved," the captain said. "The council fears the sword's presence," Lyra protested. "He's not dangerous if he doesn't use it," the captain sneered. "Tell that to the graves he left behind." They chained Elden's arms and led him toward the dungeon. The sword hummed angrily. "They treat you like a beast," it whispered. "You saved their lives, and they cage you. Is this your reward?" Elden struggled to stay calm. "Stop," he muttered. "Just stop." But the voice only grew louder. "Let me show them your strength, Elden. Let me make them kneel." As they descended the stone steps, torches flickered out one by one. The air turned cold. The guards hesitated. "What's happening?" One whispered. Then darkness burst from the sword, shadows swallowing the corridor. The chains on Elden's wrists shattered. His eyes glowed like black fire. The guards screamed and fled. Lyra ran after him, calling, "Elden, stop!" He turned, breathing hard, shadows twisting around him like smoke. "I didn't mean to," he said. "It just—" Lyra looked into his eyes. "You're losing yourself." "We have to destroy it now," the sword laughed through Elden's voice. "Destroy me?" "Little princess, you couldn't even understand me." Lyra raised a small mirror made of silver, one of her experiments. The sword's reflection shimmered, and the whispers turned into screams. Elden fell to his knees, clutching his head. "Make it stop." The mirror cracked, the sound sharp like breaking glass, and the shadow energy vanished, leaving Elden gasping on the floor. Lyra knelt beside him, eyes wide. "It works," she whispered. But only for a moment. Elden looked up at her with fear and desperation. "Then what do we do?" Lyra answered quietly, "There's one way, but it might cost you your life." The camera slowly zooms in on her face. The candles flicker and the sword hums again. "Deep and hungry viewer, if you were Elden, would you risk your life to destroy the sword or keep its power to protect yourself?" The sky above the capital burned red as dawn broke, but it was not the light of sunrise. Smoke rose from distant villages, and whispers of a growing darkness spread across the land. Inside the castle, Elden sat in a cold stone cell, his hands chained, the black sword resting on the floor beside him. Its whispers had grown quiet, like a predator waiting for the right moment to strike. Lyra stood outside the bars, her face pale from sleepless nights. "It's spreading faster than I thought," she said softly. "The curse is waking others like it woke you." Elden looked up slowly. "Others?" Lyra nodded. "The same dark mark that covers your veins has appeared on soldiers, farmers, even children. They call them the war shades. People possessed by fragments of the sword's spirit." Elden's stomach twisted. "So this is my fault?" Lyra shook her head. "No, this curse existed long before you. You only released what was already trapped." The sword pulsed faintly, and a low voice echoed in both their minds. "You cannot stop what was promised. The war shade rises, and all will kneel to the fire of Rhaegor." Lyra stepped back, whispering a spell under her breath. But the sword laughed softly, mocking her words. The sound made the torches flicker. Elden closed his eyes. "Lyra, if there's a way to end this, tell me." "There is," she said. "But it's dangerous." She unrolled an old scroll, its ink faded with age. "It says the curse can only be contained by returning the sword to its heart, the place it was first forged." "The ruins of Astaris, beyond the northern wastelands," Elden frowned. "That's a death sentence. No one goes there." "I know," Lyra said quietly. "But it's our only chance." Before they could speak further, the ground shook, dust fell from the ceiling. A horn blared outside the window, followed by distant screams. Lyra ran to the bars, her eyes wide. "They're here," she whispered. Elden pulled against the chains. "Who's here?" "The war shades," she said. "They've come for the sword." The guards rushed through the halls, shouting orders, the air filled with the sound of metal and terror. Lyra fumbled for the key. "We have to move. Now." She unlocked the chains, and Elden grabbed the sword without thinking. The moment his fingers touched it, the black veins glowed, and his heartbeat thundered in his chest. The sword's voice purred. You need me, Elden. You cannot fight them without me. He ignored it. Following Lyra through the corridors, flames licked the walls, and shadow figures moved through the smoke, twisted humans with glowing eyes. Half alive, half spirit, they reached the courtyard, where the king's soldiers were making their last stand. King Aldrich himself stood at the front lines, sword drawn, shouting commands. Lyra ran to him. "Father, we must retreat." The king's face was grim. "Retreat to where?" "The curse follows the sword." Elden stepped forward. "Let me fight them." The king turned sharply. "You've done enough." But Lyra grabbed her father's arm. "He's the only one who can stop them." The king hesitated, then nodded once. "Then fight, but if you lose control, I will end you myself." Elden raised the black sword, its surface glowing with burning runes. The war shades rushed forward like a tide of darkness. Screaming, he met them head-on, each swing cutting through shadow and flesh alike. The air crackled with power, and for a moment, it seemed like he might win, but then the sword began to laugh deep and cruel. The ground split beneath his feet. Black smoke poured out, twisting into massive shapes, faces screaming, arms clawing at the air. Rhaegor's voice filled the sky. "You cannot destroy me, boy." "I am war itself." Elden fell to one knee, his vision blurring. He saw flashes of every life the sword had taken, every scream, every soul trapped inside its blade. Lyra shouted his name, trying to reach him, but the darkness pulled her back inside his mind. Elden found himself standing in an endless field of ash. Rhaegor appeared before him, a towering figure of flame and shadow. Its eyes burned like suns. "You are my vessel," it said. "You freed me, and now you will carry me." Elden clenched his fists. "No, I won't." Rhaegor smiled. "You already are," Elden screamed as pain ripped through him. And in the real world, the sword erupted in black fire. The war shades fell back, howling. The king raised his shield, shouting, "Lyra, get away from him!" But Lyra didn't move. She reached into her satchel and pulled out a crystal shaped like a heart. Glowing faint blue, she whispered a spell, and light burst from her hands, forming a barrier around Elden. The sword hissed in fury. "Foolish child! Your magic cannot cage me," Lyra shouted over the noise. "This crystal binds souls, even yours." The light expanded, pushing the shadows back. Elden gasped, falling to the ground. His hand still gripped the sword, but the whisper had stopped. Everything went silent when he opened his eyes. The courtyard was empty. The smoke clearing, the war shades were gone. Only ashes remained. The king stood nearby, looking exhausted. Lyra knelt beside Elden, her hand trembling. "It worked," she said. "For now." Elden looked at the sword. It was dull and quiet. "No longer alive," he whispered. "How long will it last?" Lyra looked toward the northern horizon, where black clouds swirled over the wastelands. "Until it wakes again," she said. "And when it does, we'll have to finish what we started." Elden nodded slowly, his eyes dark but determined. "Then we go north." The king's voice was low. "If you fail, everything dies." The camera pulls back, showing the capital in ruins, smoke still rising in the distance. Faint shapes of shadows gather again beneath the red sky. Audience, if you were Elden, would you face the curse again, or walk away while you still can? The northern winds howled like ghosts as Elden and Lyra crossed the frozen wastelands. The sky was the color of old blood, and the ground cracked under their boots. Each step carried the weight of what they had done, and what was still coming. They had been traveling for 6 days, following the pull of the cursed sword. It no longer spoke, but its silence was worse. It was waiting, listening, watching. Lyra tightened her cloak and looked at Elden. "You haven't slept since we left," she said. "I can't," he answered. "Every time I close my eyes, I see them, the war shades, the faces of those I couldn't save." Lyra sighed softly. "You carry too much blame, Elden." He shook his head. "Blame keeps me human." As night fell, they found shelter inside a ruined watchtower half buried in snow. Lyra lit a small fire, its flame flickering weakly against the cold. Elden placed the sword beside him, its black steel faintly reflecting the firelight. Lyra studied him in silence before whispering, "Do you still hear it?" "Not words," he said. "More like memories." "Whose memories?" she asked. Elden stared into the flames. "Not mine." Outside, the wind shifted, carrying a low hum. The air trembled, and for a moment it felt like the world was holding its breath. Lyra stood up, her expression tightening. "They found us." From the fog came figures, hundreds of them, wrapped in tattered armor, eyes burning with ghostly fire. The war shades had returned. Drawn by the sword's presence, Elden grabbed his weapon, the curse surging under his skin like molten fire. "No running this time?" he said. Lyra nodded, forming a glowing sigil with her hands. "Then we make our stand." The battle began beneath the red sky. Shadows leapt from the fog, their screams echoing across the wasteland. Elden swung the sword in wide arcs, each strike slicing through darkness. The ground erupted with bursts of black flame. Lyra's magic lit up the night, streaks of white light, barriers of pure energy. Her spells burned holes in the fog. But for every shade that fell, two more rose. "Elden," she shouted, "they're endless." He gritted his teeth. "Then we fight until there's nothing left to fight." But deep inside, Elden felt the sword waking again. Its pulse synced with his heartbeat, faster and faster, until the world blurred around him. A voice rose from the blade, soft and familiar. "You cannot win without me, let me in." Elden hesitated, sweat freezing on his skin. "No," he whispered. The voice turned sharper. "Do you think she can save you?" "She will die like the rest," Lyra screamed as a shade's blade grazed her shoulder. Blood hit the snow, and Elden's rage exploded. He swung the sword with both hands, unleashing a wave of black energy that tore through the battlefield. The ground shattered, and the war shades disintegrated into ash. The silence that followed was deafening. Lyra stumbled back, her eyes wide. "Elden, what did you just do?" He dropped the sword, trembling. "I don't know." The blade lay still for a moment, then began to sink into the snow, melting the ice around it. The ground beneath them glowed red, forming a massive sigil. Lyra gasped. "It's a seal! He's breaking it open!" The earth erupted, throwing them into the air. A pillar of black fire rose from the center, and out of it stepped a figure, tall, cloaked with wings made of smoke and bone. Its voice rolled like thunder. "You have carried my blade well." "Mortal," Elden's heart froze. "Rhaegor," he whispered. The war shade god smiled. "You have done what I could not, freed me from my prison." Lyra staggered to her feet, summoning her magic. "You'll never leave this place." Rhaegor laughed. "This place is already mine." He raised one hand, and the air turned to fire. The tower collapsed, the snow burned away. Elden charged forward, shouting, "If you want the sword, take it from me!" Rhaegor's claws met his blade. The impact sent shockwaves across the plain. Elden's arms shook, his body breaking, but he didn't stop. Lyra joined the fight, casting blinding light around them. Each spell pushing Rhaegor back an inch, the god growled. "You fight like a dying ember." Elden spat blood. "Then I'll burn brighter." He forced all his strength into one final swing, the sword screaming as it struck. The explosion of black and white light consumed everything. When the light faded, Elden was on his knees. The sword shattered in his hands. Rhaegor was gone, but so was the sun. The sky was now completely red. Pulsing like a heartbeat, Lyra crawled toward him, her hand shaking. "Elden, talk to me." He looked up slowly, eyes glowing faintly with shadow. "It's not over," he said. Lyra frowned. "What do you mean?" He pointed at the horizon, where a dark storm twisted in the distance. "That wasn't Rhaegor." Her breath caught. "Then who?" "The real one," Elden said quietly, "is still asleep beneath the mountains." Lyra's expression hardened. "Then we wake him before the curse spreads again." Elden nodded, clutching the broken blade. "And we end it, for good this time." As they walked into the storm, the camera rose above the battlefield, showing the frozen wasteland covered in ash and blood. The wind carried a faint whisper, the voice of Rhaegor, echoing from the clouds. "You cannot kill war. You can only become it. When the sky turns red again, who will stand between light and shadow, when even heroes carry the darkness they once fought?" The storm had not stopped for 3 days. The red sky bled across the horizon, and the air trembled with whispers that had no source. Elden and Lyra walked through the wastelands, their shadows long and broken. Neither spoke much, for both knew that silence was safer than truth. Each step brought them closer to the mountains of Astaris, a range older than the kingdoms themselves. Somewhere beneath those mountains lay the heart of Astaris, an ancient place where the first gods had sealed their power and their mistakes. Lyra's magic had weakened, her hands trembling every time she tried to cast light. "We're getting close," she said softly. "Can you feel it?" Elden nodded, his hand gripping the remains of his shattered sword. Even broken, it still pulsed faintly, as if it remembered what it had once been. "It's calling again," he murmured as they reached the mountain's base. A strange glow seeped through the cracks in the rocks. The ground felt warm, almost alive. The closer they got, the more the air seemed to hum, like the world itself was holding its breath. They found the entrance buried under a fallen statue, a great stone figure with no head. Lyra pressed her palms against the rock and whispered an old spell. The stone trembled and split apart, revealing a stairway spiraling down into darkness. Elden hesitated. "Once we go in, there's no turning back." Lyra looked at him, her eyes calm but tired. "There was no turning back the moment you touched that sword." They descended for hours, torches flickering, shadows moving across ancient carvings on the walls. The symbols told stories of gods who fell, of mortals who rose, and of a weapon born from both light and shadow. When they reached the bottom, the air was thick with energy. In the center of a vast cavern stood a giant black crystal, half buried in the ground. Inside it, something moved, slow, pulsing, alive, Lyra whispered. "The heart of Astaris." Elden stepped closer, the glow from the crystal reflecting in his eyes. "It's beautiful," he said. Lyra shook her head. "It's dangerous." "That's not beauty, it's power trapped in pain." As they watched, the crystal cracked slightly, and a deep hum filled the cavern. The sword fragment in Elden's hand began to vibrate, glowing brighter with every heartbeat. Then a voice echoed around them, not from the walls, not from the air, but from inside their minds. "You return what was lost," it said, "and seek what was forbidden." Lyra stepped forward, her voice steady. "Who are you?" "I am the memory of what was once whole," the voice answered. "I am the first flame and the last shadow." The ground shook. The crystal split wider, revealing a faint outline of a being inside. Wings folded, eyes closed, bound in chains of light and dark. Elden's chest tightened. "That's Rhaegor." Lyra shook her head slowly. "No, that's what's left of him, or what he used to be." The figure inside spoke again. "I was not the curse, I was the balance. But man wanted power without cost, and gods feared strength without control." The cavern began to glow with shifting symbols, showing flashes of history. Rhaegor creating the sword as a bridge between mortal and divine, his followers corrupting it, turning balance into destruction. Elden fell to his knees, realizing the truth. "It wasn't the sword that was cursed," he whispered. "It was us." Lyra's eyes widened. "If that's true, then breaking it didn't end the curse. It freed it." Suddenly, the air screamed. The crystal's chains shattered one by one. A blinding surge of black and gold light exploded outward, throwing Elden and Lyra back. When the light faded, the figure stood free. Not monstrous, not godly, but human, and yet more than human. Rhaegor opened his eyes, golden and endless. "You woke me," he said, his voice calm. "Now the world will remember what it feared most." Balance restored, Elden stumbled up, sword piece glowing in his palm. "Balance? You've turned the sky to blood." Rhaegor tilted his head slightly. "And you turned the sword to ash." "We are both destroyers pretending to be saviors." Lyra stepped between them. "There has to be another way." Rhaegor smiled faintly. "There is always another way, but never a free one." He raised a hand and the ground split open, revealing a glowing pit of energy, pure creation and pure ruin mixing together. He looked at Elden. "You wanted power, you wanted meaning. Here it is. Take it. And remake the world." Elden shook his head. "I don't want your power anymore." Rhaegor's voice softened, almost pitying. "It's not mine, it was always yours." Before Lyra could react, the sword fragment lifted itself from Elden's hand. Hovering between them, the cavern shook violently. "Elden!" Lyra shouted. "Don't listen!" But it was too late. The fragment burst into light, wrapping around Elden like flame. His body lifted off the ground, eyes turning bright white. He screamed, not in pain, but in awakening. The sword reformed in his grasp, glowing with both darkness and light. Rhaegor watched with a sad smile. "You have chosen," he said. Elden fell to the ground, breathing heavily. The sword whispered softly, no longer dark, no longer cruel, just alive. Lyra rushed to him. "Elden, what did you do?" He looked up slowly, his eyes glowing faintly gold. "I took back what we lost." he said quietly. Lyra frowned. And what was that? Elden stood, his voice low. Control. But as he spoke, cracks of light spread across the cavern walls, the mountain above them shaking violently. Rhaegor's voice echoed again. The balance comes with cost, child of fire. The heart will not hold forever. Lyra grabbed Elden's arm. We have to leave now. He nodded, but as they ran, the ground split behind them, swallowing the heart of Astaris into a burning void. As they reached the surface, the storm had stopped. The red sky was fading to gray. But in the distance, far beyond the mountains, a new light rose, bright, unnatural, unstoppable. Lyra turned to Elden. What did we just release? He looked toward the horizon, gripping his glowing sword. Not a curse, he said quietly. A choice. When gods fall and men rise, balance demands its price, and every choice writes the world anew. The dawn never came. The sky hung between night and storm, gray and red at once, as if the world could not decide what to become. Elden and Lyra stood at the edge of the burning mountains, wind tearing through their cloaks. The earth trembled beneath their feet like a living heart. All across the horizon, cities had gone silent. Rivers had turned to mirrors. The balance that Elden awakened was shifting everything. Time, memory, life itself. Lyra looked up at him, fear and hope mixing in her voice. You said it wasn't a curse. You said it was a choice, so tell me, what choice did we unleash? Elden held the sword tightly, its glow flickering between gold and black. The choice between creation and ending, he said. The world will rebuild, or erase itself. The wind carried a low hum. Voices echoing faintly, the whispers were back. Not from the sword, but from everywhere. From the air, the soil, even the light. They were the voices of those who came before. The old gods, the lost kings, the fallen heroes. All speaking at once, Lyra covered her ears. They're calling to you. Elden nodded slowly. No, they're calling through me. In the distance, a blinding beam of light erupted from the ground. Piercing the clouds, the earth cracked open, forming a spiral of glowing runes. At its center stood a massive stone gate, half radiant, half shadow, Lyra whispered. The Gate of Loops? Elden looked at it with heavy eyes. The beginning and the end. They made their way across the burning plains, every step heavier than the last. When they reached the gate, the whispers fell silent, and the world seemed to hold its breath. Rhaegor's voice returned, calm and deep, echoing from within the air itself. You stand at the end of your own making. Child of fire, you have freed me, and now you must decide. Do you restore balance or break it? Elden looked at the gate, feeling its power pulling him in. If I restore it, what happens? The world resets, Rhaegor said. Every choice, every memory, undone. Time begins again. And if I break it? Elden asked. Then the curse remains, the voice said. You will live, but the world will die slow, burning forever between dark and light. Lyra stepped forward, anger and pain in her voice. That's not a choice, that's cruelty. Rhaegor's voice softened. Choice is never kind. Elden's grip on the sword tightened. There has to be another way. There always is, Rhaegor said. But it comes with a cost you cannot pay. The wind screamed again. The gate pulsing brighter, it began to open, revealing inside it a swirling void, flashes of every world that had been, every version of Elden that ever existed, some noble, some monstrous, all walking the same path toward this same gate. Lyra looked at him in horror. You've done this before. Elden nodded slowly. We all have. This is the loop, she whispered. You were never cursed. You were trapped in your own choice. The truth hit him like fire. Each life he lived, each world he saved or destroyed, had been just another turn in the endless cycle. The sword wasn't just a weapon. It was the key that kept the loop alive. Elden fell to his knees, shaking. I've been fighting myself for eternity. Lyra knelt beside him, taking his hand. Then fight one more time. For real this time. He looked at her, eyes filled with both sorrow and love. If I destroy the gate, everything ends. You, me, all of it. Lyra smiled faintly, tears in her eyes. Then let it end the right way. Elden rose slowly, lifting the sword, its light now pure white, no shadow left. The whispers screamed in fear, the air split apart. Elden, stop! 1,000 voices cried. Without the loop, there is no life. He shouted back, his voice echoing across time. Then let there be death and peace. He drove the sword into the heart of the gate. The explosion was silent, but it shook every corner of existence. The light consumed everything: land, sky, memory, soul. Lyra's hand reached for his as they were pulled into the light. She whispered one last time, "You broke the loop," and he answered softly, "No, we finished it." Then silence. No sky, no ground, only endless white. Elden stood alone, the sword gone. His reflection shimmered before him, thousands of versions of himself fading one by one, until only one remained. A small spark floated toward him. Gentle and warm, it was Lyra's light, glowing faintly in the void. He smiled, reaching for it. "I found you," he said. As his fingers touched the light, the void rippled, and something new bloomed. Green fields under golden skies, rivers shining like glass, children laughing in distant villages. The world was reborn, but without whispers, without curses, and yet far away, in a small forge at the edge of the new kingdom, a young boy dreamed of a voice calling his name from the dark. "Come to me," it whispered softly. The camera zoomed out slowly, showing the world turning once more, bright and endless but not untouched. The narrator's voice returned, deep and calm. "Every choice is a circle, every ending a beginning. The sword was never cursed, only the hearts that held it. And in every world, someone must decide whether to break the loop or begin it again." Then the voice came, "Elden, come to me."